The era of big government is over. But we cannot go back to the time when our citizens were left to fend for themselves.
In the 1990s, it wasn't just former US President Bill Clinton who thought the days of the large state were numbered. Many Western leaders agreed small government and a free market were the shape of things to come. But fast forward a decade or so and we find ourselves in a very different place. Events like 9/11 and the global financial crisis have seen many governments exert a bigger influence over the way their countries and even how some of their most important businesses are run. But of greater impact than those seismic events is the growing pressure from ageing populations, a costly condition that threatens to debilitate economies across the world. There are two main factors which make states bigger. As countries get richer, they spend more on health, education and welfare. Second, as living standards improve, their populations get older, which means more has to be spent on things like healthcare and social security. With some countries looking at the proportion of over 65s almost doubling in the next 30 years, there are serious questions being asked about how governments will cope, and more fundamentally, about exactly what they should be providing and how. And all this when cash-strapped governments are desperately trying to cut costs. The US, which spent an estimated $3.8 trillion in 2012, almost a fifth of which just went on defence, has reached a political impasse over its taxes and borrowing.
I mean, I think to say that the US has a big challenge ahead of it, it's an understatement. It has a huge fiscal mess. It taxes too little and too inefficiently, and it spends too much and very inefficiently. And I don't think the demography is the main contributor to the problem, but as the next few decades come, the demographic problem is going to make the issues more challenging. The population is aging, and we already spend a huge amount on healthcare. And with the Affordable Care Act and the aging population, that's going to exceed 20% of national income. It's going to head north towards 25% quite soon.
But isn't a larger state with all its spending and higher taxes bad for growth? Countries like Sweden, with its high taxation and spending, seem to manage fine, while Japan's low tax policy has done little to spur its economy.
The raw facts simply don't support the proposition that having a larger state is in some ways detrimental to long-term growth. What I think most people would agree, it's what the state does with that money that's essential. When we're talking about cuts, we really ought to be talking about structures. How do we register our priorities? Where are the things where the state is going to be active in the spending sense? And that's what will really make a difference in the long term, rather than just saying within a framework we're going to do a bit more of this or a bit less of that.
So size isn't all that important after all. The key is efficiency. The problem with governments, though, is that as they grow, so does their governance, and all the red tape that goes with it.
Having low taxes and a small government in a complex economy like the United States would be counterproductive. But at the same time, having a large government that intervenes in everything, and rather than providing a safety net, rather than providing infrastructure and support for innovation or educational resources, if it tries to do too many things, and if it taxes and intervenes and redistributes left, right, and center, that will be equally unproductive.
Emerging economies like India face many of the same dilemmas, with the added headache of large informal work sectors and low payroll taxes. It's unlikely that these countries will develop the same welfare states as seen in the West. The economic pressures are just too great. But what if those countries already past the point of no return?
I think it's very difficult to expect in the next 20 to 30 years that the size of the state, the amount of public expenditure is going to fall dramatically once we've got rid of some of the increases we've had because of the crisis. So once that sort of fat has gone, it's going to be quite hard to get numbers down because we've got relentless pressure from ageing across advanced economies, and that really has big pressures on health and social security, and it's going to be very hard to cut everything else so much when you've got these line items rising quickly.
Any change will be hard. In fact, many believe it'll be a job just to keep the state at its current size. Building the right structures and developing a competitive edge will be essential to any government serious about efficiency and savings. Exactly how they get there will fuel the politics of these countries for years to come. Seb Morton-Clark, Financial Times, London.